All right. Welcome, everyone. I actually have to. It's crazy. With YouTube, there's a delay. And so, like, when I click go live, it's actually like live 30 seconds ago. Interesting. Anyways, how is everyone? And I hope you guys have had a fantastic 2 weeks without me. I hope you navigated the wild news without me. It's good to see you guys. Hope everyone's doing well. Hope audio sounds good. I'm going to go ahead with it, assuming that it does. I know I've made some changes to it. All right. So, as usual, whenever I'm out for a week or two, it's usually a little more chaotic. So, it's a little less put together, a little more chaotic, and there's a couple reasons for that. One, there's just more to cover. Hey, there's more to cover, and so I have to be a little bit more picky and choosy, which unfortunately I'm not very good at, and so generally there's just more to cover. And then two, it usually means my life has been somewhat of a train wreck if I have to miss, and like going and visiting family, and so it usually means I've had a little bit less time. Anyhow. So I apologize if this is not as well put together as some of my other ones. So anyways, but I'm back at it, and for the foreseeable future, I actually have a weekend up here in September. About a year ago, I planned my first trip in like 2 years, and so I'm going on that. So I'll let you know next week exactly the days those are. It's like the first weekend, full weekend in September. Anyways. And I'll be in another state, so I won't be streaming. Anyways, all right. So let me start off. As always, all opinions here are those of my own. I have not been asked to say anything by anyone. I have no sponsors, and my opinions reflect only myself, not anybody that I currently work for in the past, present, or future. These are just my opinions. That being said, yeah, I have one question I wanted to ask you guys. I've been thinking about something along the lines of a devlog. Basically, I do some development work and some stuff like that. And I've always thought that I could do like shorter, less formal videos that are more of like a vlog about development. But they don't really go with this content, as neither does really the news. So, to be honest, I almost have thought about putting the news and that content in an entirely different YouTube channel. But I wanted to get what you guys thought, because I know that there's people that watch my long form content that I release every once in a while sporadically and really like that, and then unsubscribe when they see a live stream. So like, I don't know. It's something I've been thinking about. Let's move on to the actual news. The clickbait news that you guys were all here for is AWS is yet again our savior of open source. Some have labeled it as the killer of open source, but that's just not true. It comes down to Elasticsearch has been in a feud, as well as other people, with AWS, with changing to the SSPL and the AGPL. A lot of people have changed their licensing to be less open source, and yeah, and they blame AWS for good reason some of the time. But Elastic has kind of gone to a new low of the last couple of weeks, and yeah, it's unfortunate. Elastic made their clients not work with the open source versions, not even the open source version of Elastic itself. This is kind of a new low for Elastic and the open source community. This isn't about community, and again, this is what I preach and harp on, is that open source is not a business model. And everybody's learned this. You can make your business model support for open source. You can make your business model about a community for open source, but you cannot make your business model selling open source software. And if you do want to make it that, you have to go with either less open source and community friendly licenses like the AGPL, which is technically open source, but if you watch my soon to come out, I say soon, probably next spring documentary, the AGPL I actually like less than the SSPL because it's actually more restrictive than the SSPL, even though the AGPL is technically open source by the open source group of people that decided they could decide what open source is. Anyways, that being all said, my little rant, Elastic, this is not a really great look. So, anyways, let's actually see this this screen here. Yeah, there we go. This is the open search. This is the one that AWS and a couple other people contribute to. So if you're interested in actual open source in Apache v2 licensing, this is here. Now they look to keep it compatible as best as they can with the Elasticsearch, but they probably aren't going to be able to because Elasticsearch could make changes that they just can't match since it's not necessarily open source. Anyways, definitely check it out. All right, let's go on to our security. There was quite a bit that happened on security. There was a huge security conference, so you could always check out that, and that's why there was a whole flood of release. So we're just going to kind of hit some of the highlights as we go. I found this on a more humorous note to be kind of fun. Hackers were using Morse code in phishing attacks to evade detection. This is kind of cool. My father wishes that I knew Morse code better than I did, but yeah. Yeah, you know what? I don't know. I'm gonna call you Gregory, which is probably a huge American mispronunciation of your name, Grigory. And I'm sorry, but I agree with you. I don't know how. I want to say I don't know how you win with something like this. I feel like Red Hat and SUSE aren't perfect examples either because not all of their stuff is under a good open source license. So they're not necessarily immune to the... I can't just point to them and say they are shining examples because they've both done flawed things. Honestly, Ubuntu is probably the best one at it, and I know that there's people that are upset at the Amazon App Store on Ubuntu or whatnot, but as far as long history goes, I would have to say that Ubuntu is probably one of the better ones. If you look, 90% of their stuff is released under the Apache 2, and that's their Server Enterprise Edition. It's not like they have an open source one and a non-open source one. Ubuntu does a really good job of, you want to go download their Ubuntu server that's hardened for enterprises, you can go ahead and do that, and I think they do a really good job. So that being said, no company is without, if you wanted to go through and dig through their trash, sure, you could find something that each one of them has done. Elastic has brought it to a new low, unfortunately. Unfortunately, Elastic has brought it to a new low. And since it's about community for me, since open source is community, it makes it hard for me to stand by what Elastic is doing because I think that they're hurting their community. And I know that they need to make money. I don't not understand that point. It's sad. Yeah. Anyhow. Yeah. I agree. This, though, is still funny, and I like it. Morse code. So if you see Morse code flying around somewhere, they might be an attacker. I don't know anyone else that uses Morse code at this point, other than my father. All right. This was actually supposed to be here. This was actually where they're verifying connection to Elasticsearch, which is like their enterprise edition. Yeah, it got 40 thumbs down. You know what, people? Don't be upset at this developer. This developer, this one right here, probably actually was just as upset as you to make this change. Okay? So be careful of who you hate on, and I more would love to talk to the Elastic CEO. I would actually love to have a candid conversation with them to get their feelings and why something like this happened. But don't hate on this person. Hate on the CEO. I don't even know who the CEO of Elastic is, but hate on that person. All right, back to our security. All right, so this was a really good one. This was released to me by the community. Maybe you, Gregor? I forget who pointed this out. It's a fantastic article. I have been enjoying it. So definitely go check out this report. It is not a short read. It's something like 40 pages. It's 59 pages long. But it is definitely worth the read. Even if you're not into security, if your security is not your primary job or anything, this is definitely worth reading, and you should check it out. It goes through a lot of information. I'm about at page 30. Nope. Yeah, log auditing. This is where I'm at on page 29. So I briefly skimmed the whole thing, but I'm going through an in-depth read. It's very good. A lot of it's basic, but I think a lot of basic security is what gets overlooked. And so when you read a lot of it, it's just going to refresh, what needs to happen. And so that's another reason it's so good just to bring up over and over again, even though you guys are probably tired of me bringing up certain things. So definitely worth looking at, even if you are not under the jurisdiction of the National Security Agency or the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency. If you're wondering why we have two agencies in the United States, sadly, those aren't the only two for cybersecurity. It's like we have Moab and the Space Force. We have multiple redundancies. It's a good thing. It's not a waste of taxpayer money. Multiple redundancies. All right. Microsoft on Patch Tuesday released 44 patches with 7 critical fixes, including the print spooler vulnerability that schooled them. That's what I was going to say. And yeah, so definitely make sure if you run Windows to get that patched and updated. Or if more likely, like your enterprise supports Windows, make sure that everybody is patched and up to date. Thank you, Gregory, for, or however you pronounce your name, for let me have those articles. And anybody that wants to join the Discord and shoot me or tweet at me, or even comment on the latest news video with a article, I will pick that up for the next one, and I love it. VMware had a pretty high vulnerability at 8.6. It has been patched, so if you guys are running VMware, go ahead and check out their patch with this. I believe that they are the ones that actually found it and reported it. And hey, buddy. No. No keyboards. Not today. All right. He likes to sit on my keyboard, unfortunately. I don't know why it's a keyboard. All right. Google released a blog on security in the Linux kernel. So if you want to check that out, but basically what they're calling for is for other companies to provide more engineers to work on the upstream Linux kernel instead of like, their claim is that, one second. I need to get something to switch between these with a button. That's what I need to do this week. I need to program a button. Nothing works on Linux, though. Nobody supports Linux. Stream Deck? Nah, you're on Linux. Screw you. Anyways, this is one of the reasons I might switch to Windows, because it would make the streaming easier. But Um, so the synopsis of this security thing is that people like SUSE and Red Hat have security engineers that make patches to their kernels and for their enterprise customers. And Google is really calling them out. They don't mention SUSE or Red Hat by name to have their people be working in the upstream repositories or the upstream Linux kernel. Now, that being said, I know that SUSE, for example, does have people working in the upstream. And Google only hires 2 people for this. I know this for a fact. So Google, being as massive as a company as they do, they didn't actually state anywhere here that they were going to have more people working on it themselves. Now, I know that they hired 2 specifically for this. I'm not saying that only 2 work in the upstream kernel. To be clear, I am saying that they hired 2 specifically to work on bugs, security bugs in the kernel. That being said, they didn't come with any more like, hey, we're going to double that. They just say that there's about 100 too few engineers. So, anyways, Google, how about you hire 5? Because you can afford it. That's more than my entire team. Okay? You can afford it. This is cloud news. Are we into? No. Yeah, we are into cloud news. That was the main security. There was other securities. Like I said, there was a DNS vulnerability that Google and AWS patched. So, I don't know that was a big deal. Maybe that's a big deal, but they did it. And so, yeah. There was a couple other little minor things. I say minor things, not minor if they affect you, but again, being a little picky and choosy today, so I'm sorry. All right, so going on, this popped up out of nowhere, and I was looking at this, and I was like, it doesn't say who it is. Is this a new startup? The fact is, this is not a new startup. This is sketchy. Oh, right down here. You can't even see it. 2021 Oracle and or its affiliates. Oracle has such a bad reputation, they can't put their name on something. Anyways, I don't know how good it is. I'm going to be checking it out. It's kind of interesting that it's open source. So it's not really... It's under, this UPL, which I haven't really read the UPL. Universal Permissive License, which I'm sure cannot be good. But it's at least source available, which is good. It's a step for Oracle. I will have to introduce Oracle to the Apache 2 or the MIT license, but anyhow, it is an end-to-end enterprise container platform deploying cloud-native and traditional applications in multi-cloud and hybrid cloud environments. So at best, at worst, what you can do with this is you can take this library that they've released and kind of start to learn how other people do this. So if you're wondering, if you've ever thought to yourself, I wonder how somebody does hybrid cloud, this is a great way to go and find how some people do a hybrid cloud. This isn't the only way, and this isn't the way you have to do it. But if you're wanting that learning experience, and this is why I love the community of open source. I'm a self-taught software engineer. I did chemistry and industrial technology, which don't even ask me what that is, in college, and I did some math, a minor in math. That being said, I taught myself everything I know about programming. And one of those ways was these communities with this. So even if it's not the greatest license, which it's not, I haven't even read this whole license, it is still available there. So you can go and learn how some people handle that stuff if you like. So it's really good. Another point of cloud news here. All right. There was more than 6 people that signed up for the free trial of Windows 365. So they actually don't have any auto scaling with their big reveal and have to manually... This is what I read in this, is we have no auto scaling and we have to go manually scale whatever infrastructure supports Windows 365. Not a good look. I don't care that, you had hiccups with your first initial free trial. The fact that you had to manually scale it, That was the funny part. I found it funny. Sorry if you guys don't find that funny. Let's move on. All right. Why wasn't this in the security? It's because I suck. All right. This is again one of the plethora of things coming from hacking conventions. But basically, this stack, which is used in a lot of operational technology, has been vulnerable. Basically, this is one of the things I have complained is one of the things that most at risk is our infrastructure, and that's basically where these 14 TCP/IP stack is used. So, yep. Not really the cloud, though, so if you're a cloud person, probably not you. I still wonder who uses cloud Windows. I don't know. I honestly don't know, and my problems with it is like the pricing structure and what you get. Like basically, what you can get for a fairly decent price for like the cheap price, which I don't even remember off the top of my head. It was like $20 or something. Is worse than the laptop you need to access the thing. So like the only thing that I can really think of is like watching Netflix in a different region, which probably won't even work because it probably gets a database at data center IP address. So I don't even know that that's. I really want to know how many people actually signed up for Windows 365 because like part of me feels like this was like 1,000 people and yeah. And here's the major. I already talked about this because I thought that I just had not used. Anyways, whatever. Let's move on. Cloudflare. I really love Cloudflare. I think that they're a really great engineering place. They do a lot of zero trust blogs. So if you're interested in zero trust, you should definitely read their things. Now, half of their stuff is marketing for why you should use their stuff. Their stuff is good though expensive. So I'm not sure that they're necessary. But they do a lot of zero trust and they're really, really awesome. That being said, they released this thing on their durable objects, which is basically. Their durable objects is kind of a data store. It's kind of a different type of data store. It's not the end-all be-all for storage, but when they release technical blog articles, they are long. They are long reads, and they are really good. The conclusion that they came up with was basically they did a bunch of different things. They go through each part, so they break it into 3 parts. They're fixed. For basically there's race conditions where you can have bad data. So they break it down the problem. So this is them breaking down the entire problem and why certain things are not the fixes. And then halfway through the blog, so halfway through, they get to actually how they're fixing the problem. And the greatest part about this is this almost applies to anything you do. This is in JavaScript, and this is actually race conditions in JavaScript, which you'll be like, hey, Merrick, JavaScript is single-threaded. Yes, it is, but you can have race conditions if you talk to backend data or things like this that might be getting hit by multiple sources. So you can still have race conditions in a single-threaded environment, which is the next level of race conditions. And so this is actually really good for anybody that does any general programming, and they actually solve it in kind of the classical way. You know what? Nobody uses anything new since like the 1990s. Caching and gates, like it's the same thing, but it's a really good refresher, and I highly recommend everybody read this Cloudflare blog if you do any programming at all. It has nothing to do with security. It has everything to do with just good programming. Anyways, yeah. Definitely check it out. If you guys are a HashiCorp users and you use their Vault, they made a new, cheaper Vault full self-hosted. I'm not a Vault user. I'm not a HashiCorp user. Mostly, I don't like how they do their open source. They're kind of open source, but not really. And unfortunately, that really sucks because Nomad is fantastic, but it's not really open source, so it's not that fantastic. Anyways, yeah, so there's a cheaper one that allows you to go up to 25 clients. Yeah, that's the one problem with it, is it only gets 25 clients. I think this is actually useful, though, because you could actually do some stuff. with this, and it's cheaper, quite a bit cheaper, like half the price. So if you're a HashiCorp user, check it out. I have been spending a lot of time learning to make circuit boards, to make a carrier board that does basically this. So I'm very excited about this because this solves a lot of the problems of the Raspberry Pi. It gives you long-term storage and power over Ethernet. So you don't have a bunch of cables, you have just one cable. Now, I wish this came with 2 Ethernet ports so you had redundancy, but it doesn't. And you know what? Power over Ethernet would get really expensive if you had 2 Ethernets that could provide power. So I get why it doesn't. And I'm super excited about this. I'm still going to go down my path of I'm going to build a board. But I'm kind of relieved that I'm not the only one doing this, and so I don't have to be the only one that does, like, the whole pressure isn't on me to actually make one. I'm super excited about this because I'm going to make a Raspberry Pi cluster out of these. I already signed up to get one whenever I can, and I'm going to make this will make one of the best Raspberry Pi cluster because etcd is going to operate fantastic off of this NVMe storage, and this is going to be really great. A high efficiency cluster. I'm super excited about it. Anyways, I'm still going to make my PCB boards. You're going to get to watch me fail at making some PCB boards, but yes, those have been recorded. I just have to make them. All right, Backblaze. If you don't know who they are, they're a fantastic storage provider. If you want to store your information, they have both business to business as well as business to personal if you want to store your photos. I personally actually do use them. I'm not paid to say that. They haven't, I like them. These are my recommendations. That being said, they also every single quarter release drive failure rates. So if you're looking at loading up your NAS and you want to buy the best bang for your buck NAS drive, they run the crap out of these things and they release all of their performance stats for each quarter. So you can buy the best NAS drive that you can get. Now, that being said, I generally stick within each NAS. They have the same drive. So if I buy an Iron Wolf drive, that whole NAS is going to be an Iron Wolf drive NAS. But that being said, you can check this out if you're in the market for them. It's pretty cool, and I'm really happy that they share this data with us. All right, so this is pretty cool. This is a machine learning blog by Microsoft. I thought that it was really, really well done, really cool, and is definitely worth a read. I definitely disagree with this, artificial intelligence. Stop calling it artificial intelligence, call it machine learning or whatever. You don't call a plane artificial flight or this light bulb artificial light. Yes, the sun is natural light, but I don't call it artificial light. It's light. That's what it literally is, light. It's not artificial. Now, what we have is not good machine intelligence, but that's what we're looking for is machine intelligence. So call it machine intelligence or machine learning. Don't call it artificial intelligence. Pet peeve of mine. Oh, if you were wondering how Rust was going to make it into this, this was my way of bringing Rust into the whole full circle loop. If you don't know what binprod is, you probably don't need to use it. It is a serialization library. It's not my favorite. But this was a cool article on how they developed a library, and it deals with Rust. So if you're looking at making a serialization library or using one, this is probably worth a read, and that is why applied statistics. Yes, don't call it artificial intelligence. Applied statistics is probably better, more accurate to what we have. When we actually get real machine learning or machine intelligence, we'll call it machine intelligence. Right now, it's applied statistics. Greatest thing is Google currently says that I have 0 viewers, which I know is categorically incorrect. But yeah, if you're watching, go ahead and leave a like, maybe subscribe. I tend to try to make good content. I don't know that I make good content. I try though. It's an effort. All right. So Slack released a thing on their APIs, basically how we design our APIs at Slack. Pet peeve of mine, always version them. I have seen unversioned REST APIs. Don't do that. That's the worst. But basically, do one thing and do it well. This is probably a more of a consideration of doing microservices well. Do one thing, do it well. Make it fast and easy to get started. Strive for intuitive consistency. Basically, this means like if your API works in one way, make sure that the whole API works that same way, so that if you use a new endpoint, you kind of know how it might work. Google is the worst at this. Return meaningful errors. This is basically good programmer knowledge, but I feel like it has to be repeated. Every single function that you write, everybody will be like, return good errors. Yes, of course, return good errors. But then it gets lost when you make an API or something like this, or just if you don't keep repeating it, don't keep telling each other and your new developers to return good errors, then your REST API doesn't return good errors. And I'm just as much at fault as this, and this is why I bring these up, is because I think there's so much we can learn from them. This is one I kind of disagree with. Design for scale and performance. This is a Slack problem. I see too many people that get bogged down by designing for scale prematurely. And so I love their blog and I love this whole thing and I think that you should read it. But I would say that I disagree with the design for scale and performance. I honestly do. There are some companies that when they make a service need to design for scale and performance immediately. Think Microsoft should have done Windows 365 design for scale, because anything that Microsoft or AWS or Google is probably going to get hit with more people than a lot of our services ever get hit with anyways. And that goes with Slack. When Slack creates something, they're going to have it for scale. They bring up some of their problems that they had with scaling, but having problems with scaling is actually a good thing. Write something quick, fast, and dirty that gets the job done. And then if your service actually gets used and you have problems of scaling, you can have a party because you have a problem of scaling. It means that you did something well that people actually like. So I think it's more important to actually get something down and get something done before worrying about scale. Now, once you're a company like Slack or Microsoft or Azure or GCP, then you could maybe start designing for scale at the very beginning. But at your startup, at your new product, I'm not sure that I would agree with that. Sorry, I went on a little bit more of a rant than I should have there. My bad. Let's move on. Cool little blog post about migrating PostgreSQL to Kubernetes. So if you're looking at running a database on Kubernetes, which I again think that, no, I don't want you to show me stuff. I again don't think that you should do that most of the time. You should, as long as you're really good with Kubernetes. I don't think small teams or teams that aren't really good with Kubernetes should run their databases in Kubernetes. Stateful applications or stateful sets exist and you can do it. It just breaks Kubernetes a little bit to make it work. So definitely go into it understanding that. That being said, this is a really great breakdown of them running Postgres on Kubernetes. I think it's cool and they did a good job. And they wrote up a really nice blog post with better little pictures than I do. I need to get better about my animations. I'm a really horrible animator. All right, so brought this up. You need to make sure that if you could stop signing in, you have to be doing it with a token now. You cannot be using the username and password as of August 13th, which has passed. That was last Friday. So sorry I didn't bring this to your attention last week because I was being lazy and visiting family. So definitely if you couldn't log in on the command line, it's because you need a token now. So yeah, basically that's your problem. And this is all around security because there was some workflows that were affected. All right. So, best practices for deploying highly available apps in Kubernetes, part 1. Hopefully, part 2 and 3 and 4 and 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10 come out on this, because I think that actually this is an undervalued concept. You can deploy an application pretty easily. And, if you follow the class that I'm releasing, it's really easy to make a deployment and do it. But there are a lot of steps that you need to take if you actually want to do it well. And this was a very good introduction into doing that well. It's not the end-all be-all. It's high level and just goes over the bare basics. I plan on going into depth in these in the future, probably like a year or so from now. But this is really good information, and you should definitely check it out. Read this article if you want to deploy applications at scale on Kubernetes. Which, I mean, if you're deploying on Kubernetes, you're planning on scale. If you're not, stop using Kubernetes. This I found interesting. 0LB. I have friends, they refuse to speak to me about it. So I need to see. Unfortunately, I don't think it's getting open sourced. I couldn't find it open sourced, and that makes me sad. And now it's going to be there. Watch it be. Kong releases a lot of their stuff as open source, but I could not find it. Yeah, 0LB doesn't exist. So nobody will tell me if 0LB will be released as open source. I sure hope it is. But so far, I cannot find anything about it or any statements on it. So until then, it's a dead technology to me. Completely dead. Kong, open source 0LB. You can do it. Kong is generally a cool company. And some of my personal friends work at Kong. All right. Debian released Debian 11. So if you're on Ubuntu or any of the sub-projects from Debian, this is a big step. And there was actually a lot of cool features. I'm not going to cover them all because I do have to get to work eventually. But yeah, pretty cool. And you'll be seeing it trickle down. Probably Ubuntu 2022 will be, 2022 will be based on it, I think. I don't know. I kind of just accept whatever Ubuntu hands me as golden. Not entirely true, but I run several Linux distributions. But my main runner is Ubuntu because I like it just to work, and generally Ubuntu just works out of all of them. And I generally like their open source statements. I'm not saying they haven't blundered. They just do a pretty good job. All right, this was something. I'm going to completely botch this name, but Nirmata is what I'm calling it. It's like Nirvana, except Nirmata. I'm sorry. I'm not making fun of your name. I'm just really bad at names that I have no idea where their origin comes from. All right. I suppose I could have looked that up, but that would have been too much work. Anyways, I just found this company, and they have a couple open source projects that actually look kind of cool. I know that I've talked about OPA, which is a policy management. It's the open policy agent, and OPA is pretty cool. And I've not actually used these, but they actually have some open source projects that are pretty cool. So this is a Kubernetes native policy management. I'm not even going to try because is that an I? Is it an E? Is it a Kiev? Who knows? English is rough. But yeah, it's accepted in the CNCF as a sandbox project, which this is actually really important. And I want to give Nirmata credits for this. Is it means that it's going to stay Apache 2. You're never going to have to worry about them changing it because they gave it to the CNCF, which, whether you like the CNCF or not, that's one thing that it will make sure is the company can no longer make it a proprietary thing. So I really like this, and it's their commitment to open source. So anyways, it's worth checking out. They have a couple other things. This was my coolest one because my next video is on eBPF. Yeah, it's a network monitor that uses eBPF. So check out all of their stuff. They have a couple things here. I'm not a Zookeeper person, but if you are, maybe this is cool. They have a workflow for it. I don't really know. Um, yeah, the ones I was really interested in is in the policy agent and the eBPF network monitor. These other ones, I don't really. Cube static egress IP. That's a mouthful, but this is something they do, and they should be given credit for supporting open source, supporting a community. If you wanted to do static egress IP and wanted to learn, guess what? They now have a project where you can go and figure out how somebody else did it. So, cool. I am not a web front-end person. But I really do like Vue, and I've used it just a little bit, and they released 3.2. So yeah, if you are a front-end person, if you're one of those mythical full stack people that are just as good at me at the back end and even better at the front end, kudos to you. I am not that good. I cannot be. Can I go into a front end and fix some crappy JavaScript or TypeScript? Absolutely. Can I architect a massive application's front end and back end? No. I can do its back end, not its front end. Anyways. So, go give these guys a star and support them. Vue is pretty cool. Facebook released Droidlet, which is kind of a cool open source project. So basically, this is just like their little this project is just like a group of tutorials and stuff for running around with their stuff. So it's not as good as some of the other open source things that I call out, but it actually has a lot of tutorials in it that actually are practical, whether you're using Facebook stuff or not. And it's released under the MIT license, not a better license out there. So, all right. So that is it, guys. All right. Before you go, don't go. I have a question for you. I need more submissions for a silly or not silly Kubernetes operator. I need it from you guys. So if you have an idea for that, please let me know. Because I'm going to open up voting, but I only have one person. So it's not really voting. I'm just going to be selecting their idea. So please give me your idea, because I'm really excited about doing that live stream and making an operator with you guys so you can ask questions about why I'm doing stuff. So yeah, definitely do that. And also, give me your thoughts on what I asked you about before. Would you guys like to, get another YouTube channel where I post once a week of just half an hour of me programming something that I found interesting or that I failed at programming? It doesn't really go with this content. So that's why, and maybe I'd move the news there as well. But those were my thoughts. Leave me your feedback, and thanks for joining me. I really appreciate all of you. I really appreciate all of the support all of you give me. You guys are way too kind to me, and thanks for watching. I hope that you learned something, or at least were entertained by... I don't know. I'm not really an entertaining person. Actually, that's my biggest complaint people have with me, is that I'm too drab, like I'm too monotone. I'm trying to get, I drank a whole cup of coffee before doing this so that I can be a little bit more expressive. So I also think that I'm not used to talking to a camera. So maybe as I do it a little bit more, I'll get a little more natural and a little bit flow a little bit more. So we'll see. An operator that updates what application? You name it. Let's do it. I'll do it. Let me know I'm going to do probably like a 4-hour stream. 4 hours at least. If we're having a ton of fun, I'm not going to cap it at 4 hours, but I want to do one on an operator. So I'm releasing a video. I wanted to this week, but it's probably going to end up being next week, on my Kubernetes game operator that I made, that just like goes through it and goes through some of the things like finalizers and things like that. But I didn't want but I also want to do a full-fledged live stream where people can join and ask questions. So like, if I'm not explaining the one thing that they're confused about, they can just be like, yo, that's confusing. Why did you do that? Or why don't you do this? And maybe I'll learn something from the more experienced viewers that are better than me. So, yep. Let me know. I would do an operator that updates an application. You just got to tell me the application, because otherwise I don't know what application you're talking about. And the possibilities are limitless. I will have it update the Hello World application to say hello, not world. Anyways, have a fantastic week, everyone. Thanks for joining. Thanks for hanging out. Thanks for watching this. And thanks for all your support. I will see you guys next week for another news that's hopefully